So, there's a word I love to say, and it's called Speciale. You know what else is Speciale? This is the Straton Speciale. It's the top of the line watch that they offer, and this is available in two formats. It's either got a mecha quartz movement, or this watch has a Valjoux. The Valjoux 7750 to be precise, and I just think about $1,100–1,200 to have a watch with a Valjoux movement, but this kind of styling is fabulous. There's not many watches, if any, that will compete with this specification, look and movement inside it, the beating heart inside, that infamous movement. That's what we're going to discuss a bit in this video. Why is the Valjoux 7750 such an iconic movement? And what a way to get it, you know, on your wrist without it looking like a Flieger chronograph or having to splash out on an IWC that's thousands of pounds, all those kind of things. Can you get that movement on your wrist on something that looks as quirky as this? Is it any good? This video is going to cover that. Here's the stats and specs coming straight up, and I'll see you after that. We'll get down to the nitty and the gritty. See you then. So the Straton Speciale. Why is this watch so special? Well, the first thing I'm going to talk about, which many of you, if you don't know already, is it's got a Swiss movement in here. It's got the ETA, the Valjoux 7750. Some people have written articles and even quoted this as, quote, the world's greatest chronograph movement by far ever. Really is my first question. Well, I don't think it is, because there's obviously ultra high complication chronograph movements they've used in extremely top end watches, but this, if you account for the fact of how it's approachable and attainable for the average person, it's within reach. That's what makes it special. But it is flawed in some ways. I mean, it's not the most refined thing in the whole world because of sometimes how the pushers feel, and the rotor wobble is very noticeable. But that's part of what makes it so reliable. And also in part why the movement I often criticise for that unrefinedness, which is the Miyota 8215, is that rotor wobble, is actually the flip side of that is it gives it reliability. Now, a bit of history behind this. In 1969, Zenith slash Movado introduced the first auto chrono, and that was the El Primero. Now, a man called Edmund Capt was employed to develop the movement that is now known as the 7750, because they wanted to compete with those people offering a automatic chronograph. There was already a Valjoux manual wind, which is 7733, I think it was called, and they wanted to bring into play a reliable chronograph which was automatic. Now, the requirements for this new movement, which had to be done as quick as possible, had to be robust, reliable, accurate, relatively inexpensive, and it should have a quick set day and date, which obviously this one has got. And this was all coming at the time when the Japanese were conquering with the quartz watches, and it was the looming quartz crisis, which many of you may or may not know about. It's because it's kind of almost killing off mechanical watches, and it did kill off a lot of these established brands that have been around for a really long time. But that's a whole other video. So the starting point for the 7750 was the Valjoux 7733. What was different about this Valjoux movement? That is an important thing as to why it's special. Inside here, without going into too much technical detail, which I don't have the knowledge to go into detail to explain, is it didn't use column wheels. It had levers instead, and that effectively simplified things. Does affect the feel of the pushers, apparently. It gives them a totally different feel. But the plus side is increased reliability of the movement, which is a huge plus, because I guess the older movements were a lot more fragile and very expensive to mass produce, whereas the Valjoux, because of the new development of how it was made and engineered, was a lot easier to mass produce. And it was only a few years later, 1973, after a few years of development, they managed to get the movement into the first customer watches, which is fantastic. 1975, demand unfortunately decreased already. So much so that production stopped completely. Absolutely, totally stopped. How terrible is that? It only just got going. But why are they around still today? Bearing in mind that Capt, the developer of this movement, he was asked to actually destroy absolutely everything. But that was like asking someone to kill their own child, the developed baby that he had created. And so what did he do? He went against the demands of his employer to destroy everything, sod it. Mechanical movements are dead. What he did, he stored and saved all the data and everything needed to potentially get things going again. Lucky he did, because there was a resurgence again, 1980s. There was renewed interest in mechanical watches again. Thank God he saved that information, because it could have been gone forever. But then it was a number of years later, the Swatch Group bought the company effectively, and it was sort of merged into ETA, and it all became part of the umbrella under Swatch and the ETA movements, etc. But it's still called the Valjoux. So why is it so popular still now? Because it's been so versatile. It was actually used in the very early Breitlings when they were bought out from Mr. Breitling. I've forgotten the name of the new owner, but effectively he put it in a new watch and a new design theme, and they put the Valjoux movement in, and it was effectively something that was in the heart of a Breitling, which propelled them forwards into the future. And then IWC have used modified versions of the 7750 because it's got a modular design. They can update and change bits of it, add bits into it as well. It's got that ability to modify, which effectively means someone like IWC, they could make a Da Vinci perpetual calendar movement, which is actually reliable. It was so complicated, yet reliable. So that's your history lesson out of the way. As the majority of this video is actually just me talking about that. So how does it function in this watch? Well, as you can see here, what we've got at the 12 o'clock is the timing hand, and then this watch you've got the tachymeter scale going around. So you press start by the top button. The very first press, when you first ever press, there's a really nice mechanical feel to it. And then when you stop it, it's a little less stiff for continued timing functions. And then effectively you've got here is a 30-minute counter, and it counts up to 12 hours down here. So I can imagine every half an hour it clicks over to another increment on this lower subdial here. And you've always got a continuously ticking seconds hand here at the 9 o'clock. So it's just lovely and smooth. You've got that smooth sweep of the timing hand there. When you press stop and then you reset it, it's an immediate snapback. Everything goes back to original positions again, and that is so clever, so incredible. So you get ruggedness, reliability, and that proper mechanical functionality, which the other positive as well is if this needs servicing, repairs and parts, it's so easy to come by. I mean, it's not going to be dirt cheap at the moment, don't get me wrong. It's still going to be an expensive watch to look after, but a mechanical chronograph is a luxurious movement to have, and it's not going to be cheap to look after long term. This is one of the most attainable watches, brand new, you can get with this movement in, and there's very few, if any, watches that have a Valjoux and look like this. You've got this gorgeous racing themed timepiece, which has got that proper timing chronograph movement in there. What a marriage made in heaven. So what am I not so sure about with this actual watch? You know all about the movement now. Well, effectively, it's very minimal. I like and I also dislike this case design. I think it's just an awkward shape to wear on the wrist. It's got an amazing lug to lug. It's only, like you saw in the stats and specs, it's very short. It's actually shorter in lug to lug than it is in the case width. So it wears really well, but that makes it look very tall. As you can see, it's 15 and a bit millimeters in thickness and in height. So it's going to wear unusually, but it's not uncomfortable. Just got to bear in mind, you've got that very thick and complicated movement beating away in there, doing its thing. So add into that this lovely tachymeter rehort here. That adds some depth to it. And then you need space for all those hands to be moving around in there. And you've got domed sapphire. So it's amazing how well packaged this is actually. It's a very compact watch with that movement. Often watches with this Valjoux movement are large chronograph pilot watches. Whereas this is a lovely dinky little racing style watch. Very retro 1960s. Again, that's what makes this unique and very special. What's also special is it's contemporary with its tech. You've got the sapphire crystal, screw down crown, lovely 7mm crown, easy to undo and wind. And the winding feel of this movement is gorgeous, I must say. But you shouldn't be doing it too much. It's the kind of thing you shouldn't be doing all the time on your automatic watch. It's just to get it going and then rely on that rotor spin inside when you're wearing it to give it, throughout the day, a charge up. It's just such a fun watch to wear. I mean, this colour that's the other criticism, is this orange does clash with the yellow. It's a bit of a clash going on there, personally. But if I was to get one of these, I would definitely like the brown. That's apparently the best seller. Then there's a purple, there's a blue. People just sport for choice really with these. So I think if you want something that's going to be a gorgeous, fun weekender watch, something you're going to slap on for just going out and have some fun, and something a bit more sporty and a bit more crazy, a bit more informal than maybe your Monday to Friday, this, again, it fits in that. And why not have something a bit more exotic, especially with that movement inside? Now, this is a review piece that's been sent around, so I took the liberty of unscrewing the case back just to have a look at that movement. As you can see, the one in here is not a highly decorated, highly finished version. You can get them at whole different grades, and the grades different effectively mean they've got blued screws and Geneva stripes and high polish on all the different components, and the movement in this one is not that. But this one has been regulated fairly well. It's not running like a within Costco or anything like that, but again, this is still great for a piece that's been sent all over the place and reviewed by different people, and it's been knocked about. It's still running like a dream, no problems at all. The other thing, it's not a normal thing to be amazing on this type of watch. The loom isn't like incredible by any means, but it does the job, but it's not amazing. I've seen a lot worse, but for this type of watch, I'd say it's totally acceptable. Although this has got scratch resistant coating, the other thing I'm a bit critical of is this way it has to be polished all the time to clean smudges off. If you're like me and always fiddling with the watch or pressing these pushers all the time, you're going to get smudgy fingerprints on it quite quickly, but that's a given with any polished watch. But it just shows up more on this because there's so much more of it. I'm really glad this has a DLC scratch coating protection on here, but it's not perfect because a few little nicks and marks have still managed to be put on here by previous people reviewing it, etc. So it's not going to be totally immune to scratches, but it's held up really well. There's none of the micro scratches you'd normally get. But what do I like? I mean, I've already alluded to the design. Obviously, the 1960s look of it. It just really looks like an old vintage TV or a dashboard you get on an old Alfa Romeo or something. I mean, I tried to find pictures and I don't know where I've thought of this from because I can't find any cars with a dash instrument that looks like this. But for some reason, it makes me think of that. I think it's just a clever play on colours and shapes. You know, the rectangular with the softened corners and the bold colours, just gorgeous. And I think the brown would look even more 1960s because that was a very popular colour in that era. So $1,199 is not that much for a watch that has got all this tech and the Valjoux movement. Nothing else is like this. It's very much something I would say you should save up for because it really is something speciale. I put this on one of my straps, which I sell in the store. Do check out my store. Link is obviously in the description. I appreciate you coming because a lot of people have seen my videos and kindly come and had a look at my wares and bought something. So I do appreciate that. So there you have it. I hope you've enjoyed today's video about the Straton Speciale. Will you buy one? If not, have you enjoyed just watching my video? If you have, thank you so much. And if you would like to continue watching more of my videos, there's some more pop-ups coming up. Hopefully you can click on one of those and continue your YouTube journey with this channel. If not, been a pleasure. See you in the next one. Bye for now.